Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror in film, literature, and popular culture. Well, greetings, everyone. My name is Bruce Markison, and as always, I'm joined by our producer, co-host, Tracy Asteria. Tracy, welcome to the show. How are things going with your Christmas preparations?
Hey, Bruce. Everything is coming along really well. I have the tree up. I have all of my sci-fi little warships all over my tree, along with dragonflies. And there's lights everywhere. So I'm happy. And my next door neighbors have finished decorating, and it looks beautiful over there too. Their decorations actually sing.
Nice. Well, we're going to be talking about frightening things before Christmas, which is especially appropriate for me because on Sunday, my daughter and I went to get our Christmas tree, which is always an annual process and procedure. We went to a place in Cooperstown in the village. It's like 3.5 miles from our house. The guy who tied the tree to the top of our car is a very nice man, but he didn't really know what he was doing. 3 times we had to stop along Route 28 because the tree was literally starting to slide off the roof of the car, and we were afraid of causing an accident. So in a 3-mile stretch, we stopped at least 3, maybe 4 times. It probably took 30 minutes to get home. Normally it's about 6 minutes. So it was an adventure. And the other frightening thing I'm always concerned about is the tree falling over. It has not fallen over at this point, so that's a good thing. But
that's a good thing. Do you have any
keep an eye
cats,
on that?
Bruce?
Yeah. So that's a perfect lead in to our guest this week. He might not take that as a perfect lead in, but he's a very interesting guy. His name is Jeff Belanger. Jeff is one of the most prolific researchers of folklore and legends that we have today. He's an award-winning and Emmy-nominated host of the New England Legends series, broadcast both on Amazon Prime and PBS. He's also the author of 16 books, including his latest, and that's our main topic of conversation in this week's show. The book is called The Fright Before Christmas, Surviving Krampus and Other Yuletide Monsters. Jeff, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, and I hope all of you and your listeners somehow survive the holiday season. The odds are not with us. I should feel like I should warn you right up front, but I hope we get through it.
I hope so as well. First off, I love the title of the book, The Fright Before Christmas. Now, did you come up with that, or was it the publisher, or did you work together on that one?
I did, actually. I didn't like their first title. They wanted to get Krampus in the title because Krampus has the movie deals. He's all the sex appeal. I get it. People know Krampus, but I think the story is so much bigger than Krampus that I said, we can't call it Krampus. That's not fair. That's not really what the book is. That's just a piece of it. And so one of my favorite all-time movies is The Nightmare Before Christmas. And I, of course, being a paranormal guy, being a ghost guy who has previously been known mostly for all things Halloween, there's a long debate. Is that movie a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie? And if you love it, you say, I don't care. I watch it from October all the way through January, and then I'll watch it again next year. And I was kind of like, that's what I'm talking about here. I feel like the Halloween season, Halloween gets so much attention now. It's just so much bigger than when I was a kid. And then when I started to research Christmas, I went, oh my, Halloween is only the second most frightening holiday. And it's a distant second. I mean, it's a warm-up act at best. The kind of act you come in like on the last song, like you're out in the parking lot, having fun before the main act. And so really that's where all this was born. So I was just like, I wanted to sort of play with it. And we knew the idea was going to be this hardcover, beautiful, gift book. Mm-hmm. And so Fright Before Christmas was a play, of course, on the most famous poem.
That's right. Yeah. When did you come up with the idea for this book? When did you start writing it, working on it?
So 10 years ago, I give a lot of talks, especially around October, still do. That hasn't changed at all. And a local museum near me in Massachusetts, one December said, hey, would you ever consider doing a talk on Krampus? Krampus is getting sort of hot now. And I went, yeah, you know what? I mean, that sounds interesting. I've been meaning to look into them anyway. So I did, and I did a little talk. And some people came up after and said, hey, well, you didn't mention Belschnickel and you didn't mention this. And I went, you're right. And I wrote it down. And then the following year, I did more of these talks. And I learned there's a lot to this. And really, though, the whole impetus started around that same time. It was early in December, and I was trying to put up my Christmas lights and my Christmas wreath on my front door. And I was cold. It was really cold here that day, and my fingers were getting numb. And the crafting wire that held up my wreath on the front door broke because it's old and rusty. And my plastic fake wreath fell to the ground, and I was just over it. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Why the wreath? Why the evergreens? Why the lights? Half of them don't work. Why December 25th? Why Krampus? Why Santa Claus? Why the presents? Why the tree inside? Why do we go through so much trouble? Why do I go into Hawk for this one day? Spend months paying it off. And to be fair, I'm a dad. I had a young child at that time, and I'm a husband and all that other stuff. But I said, there's answers to those questions, because I know that from all the work I do. My whole career has been about the backstory. And so I sort of broke the holiday apart into all its original pieces and put it back together again, piece by piece. And I went, oh my, this is dark and scary and sinister and creepy. But underneath all that darkness, all that lethal darkness, I mean, Halloween's scary, the veil's thin, ghosts come out, ghosts scare some people. I get that. But Christmas could kill you. There's monsters that are out there to kill, to maim, to take us back and eat us. And underneath all that darkness, there is this ray of hope that really makes it the most beautiful and all-inclusive holiday. And I say that as a Reformed Catholic, a kid who was raised Catholic, right? Who used to wonder as a kid why Santa didn't visit my Jewish friends. I say that this holiday, when it was first conceived and came around, was the most inclusive of all of them, because it was all about the winter solstice. And whether you believe or don't believe, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist, whatever, if you live in a northern climate where winters are tough, affects everybody. And that's what this was always about, is how do we survive this devastating, this dangerous time of year. And from that time of year, the stories were born of monsters coming to get us that we need to look out for and look out for each other.
Oh, interesting.
No, that's really interesting, because a lot of us try to think of Christmas as a joyous time, and it can be. It can be a time for family, kindness toward others. But you talk a lot, especially in the beginning of the book, about the association with the winter solstice, the darkness, the fact that centuries ago, people really were frightened about, am I going to get through the winter? Do we have enough food? Do we have enough source of heat to keep us going? I mean, that was a legitimate concern for a long time for anybody, especially living in a colder climate.
Absolutely. And it is still a time for family. It's literally a time that we should stay inside where it's safe, because outside is dangerous. And whether a monster gets you or the elements, like if you die from exposure, what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, you're still dead. And so we tell these stories, we hibernate. If you're a farming culture, you're not as busy in the winter. You don't have fields to tend to every single day. It's they're frozen over until the morning. And so I mean, you've got idle time. You've got so much going on. So much is different than the other three seasons, that we have to sort of hunker down, stay inside, and appreciate each other. We all remember COVID. There are families and marriages that didn't survive that because there was too much time together. I think winter's just about right, because come spring, we're like, yeah, we got to get out of here. It's time to get outside and,
Exactly.
get some space again. And then come winter, we'll appreciate each other again.
Oh my goodness. So I have to ask before we start getting right into talking about your book and everything. How did you develop such an interest in folklore and in mystery and become such an adventurer that you are as a human being?
I probably, because I grew up around it. I was born in Massachusetts. I grew up in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, and the town next to us is Monroe, Connecticut, where Ed and Lorraine Warren live.
Mhm.
And so I knew Ed and Lorraine Warren since I was about 13.
Oh, wow.
This is pre-internet, like all that stuff. They were just local ghost hunters, local celebrities.
Mhm.
And I'd go see their talks in October and stuff. And they'd speak at libraries and things. And I thought it was just fascinating. And I had friends who lived in houses they said were haunted, these old homes. And so I guess you combine Ed and Lorraine Warren's influence with, being around these old historic haunted homes.
Mhm.
And I was just intrigued. I wanted to know more. And I'm sure my Catholic faith actually had something to do with that too, as I was like, I want to see this stuff that they talk about from the pulpit and in the Bible. Like, I don't want to take your word for it. Like, show me the ghosts. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so the older I got, the more I moved away from the church and the more I moved into almost atheism, not quite. And I think because I didn't quite get there because I believed in ghosts, whatever they were.
Right.
And as I got older, I started writing for newspapers and magazines. And around October, you go looking for feature stories, and that turned into a career I never could have planned. But I love history. I love talking to people, hearing their firsthand accounts. And then when someone says, I was in this room and I saw a ghost, well, I want to go in the room too. I can't help it. I want to go there and I want to see what you saw if I can. And most of the time I could not. That doesn't mean I thought they were lying to me, but it meant that, I wasn't there. And eventually I got to the point where I said, I don't know where the ghosts are, but I absolutely know where they were. Because I have been all over the world in all kinds of haunted places, looking for this stuff. And I have had experiences of my own now, not many, 25 years of doing this, but I've had a few enough that I absolutely believe. And I think there's something to it. And there's some inherent magic at work that sort of connects all of us. And so once you go down the rabbit hole, like there's no point in going halfway. You just go all the way. So I've moved from ghosts to other stories and monsters and cryptids, aliens, bring it on, whatever weird thing is out there that's on the fringe. I think there's a lot we can glean about ourselves when we explore that.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. What a life. I can't believe you, Ed and Lorraine Warren. That's amazing.
Well, it's fun, so when I was a kid, there's no internet. So I remember we would talk about various houses on Main Street in Newtown being haunted, and some of them do have that reputation. And there was one, it was a place called Superstar Sports. Don't look it up. It's long gone, but it was a sporting goods store. Like they would sell you baseball bats and tennis rackets and baseball gloves and all that stuff. And it was an old house converted into a store. And everybody sort of talked about it being haunted. And some kids would say, no, I don't believe in any of that. That's not true. And then someone would say, no, Ed and Lorraine Warren were there. And that's how you drop the mic. That was it. It was,
wow.
They checked it out. It's haunted. And you went, oh, okay. And that was the end of the story.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow.
Jeff, very interesting you bring up the Warrens, who are always kind of a source of controversy. They, of course, influenced the Conjuring films. They have their supporters. They have their naysayers. Where do you fall on the Warrens?
Oh, man. Well, they had good hearts. Always good hearts. I think factually they were wrong a lot. I think they, I know that. I've interviewed them about projects, and Ed would start dropping dates and you'd say, no, that's not even close to right, Ed. It's just, but I think their hearts were in the right place. They also, I know John Zaffis will yell at me for this saying this, but I don't care. Like they really had a very Roman Catholic approach to everything they did. And yes, of course, they claim to work with people of all faiths, but you're throwing holy water and talking about demons at every turn. Demon means you're speaking from a belief system, not from a place of, any object, something bumps in the night and you're scared. I get it. But to call it a demon is quite a leap. So yeah, I mean, you could find as many things wrong with them as right with them, but they were doing this at a time when very few others were, and they were certainly pioneers, and nothing could take that away from them. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, and it's not the way I do things, but I don't perform exorcisms either.
Yeah.
Well, not good ones. Mine never work. Demons don't listen to me.
You talk about ghosts, and right at the start of the book, page 2 of the introduction, you refer to the lyric from the very popular Christmas song that Andy Williams did. I think it may have been back in the 1960s. And the lyric, "There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago." And your response to that is very much the same as I think mine would have been as a child. Scary ghost stories. I don't remember that being part of Christmas tradition, but it very much is.
It was in Victorian times. It was huge, mid 1800s, all the way up into the early 1900s, and then that tradition went away. And I can specifically tell you why if you want to get into the nuts and bolts of it. But
Sure.
when I grew up, there were no scary ghost stories. Although there was one that was that we do all recall. We're just overlooking it at the moment. A very important one, critical one of the best ever written by a master, Christmas Carol, right, by Charles Dickens.
Mm-hmm.
That is a story that has been performed by cartoons, by Muppets, by stage, productions, by various movie studios, and everything in between. It's a story I still consume every single year, and when done well, it is a scary ghost story. It's supposed to be, but that's just one. It used to be a tradition that this was the time to talk about frightening stuff. Think about Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, right? I remember that bleak December. I mean, of course, December is the time. That is so little daylight. The trees are skeletal. It's cold. I mean, the long, long night is coming of midwinter. It is a frightening time of year. It's inherently frightening. And Poe knew it. And we've just sort of glossed it over with a bunch of Christmas lights for a reason that we may not fully understand, but an ancient reason, in that we want to light up the night. I mean, it's a long, dark night. We literally have to illuminate it. We have to be beacons so we can find our own way home. And so wayward travelers can find their way to our homes if they're lost and need help. So, yeah, those traditions. And when Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol, he was one of many, many, many people that were writing scary ghost stories around Christmas time. His just went into the stratosphere. His was more popular, was better. It got huge beyond huge, and it survived the ages compared to some of the other ones. But you can find old collections online of some of those great old, Victorian Christmas ghost stories. But so they were a tradition. But even in 1961, I think, when Andy Williams had that song, that tradition was mostly gone by then too. He must have just been remembering his childhood when they were maybe the last gasps were still around. But I don't know. I'd like to see them coming back. And I think they are. I think a lot of this dark stuff is coming back, really off the back of Krampus. If we're being honest, I mean, he's the pop culture figure now, and he forces us to ask, like, well, what else is out there? And I think they're all coming back because we need them, because we're summoning them once more. We are bringing them back from the shadows of Christmas, where they weren't gone. They were just dormant. They were waiting for us to call on them again. And I think we're calling on them again right now.
Jeff, when do you think winter ceased becoming this time of death and became a less urgent, although still concerning time of darkness and cold?
Well, in modern times, I mean, we've got plow services and heat, and when it's too snowy out, we call DoorDash. We've gotten soft, Bruce. We've gotten pretty soft. You know what I mean? But and those are our much more modern times. But really, put your mind back only 100 years, just 100 years, and it was a different picture. You could be snowed in for days, right? You could run out of fuel. Put your mind back 200 years, and really, we're talking about all the dangers that all these legends talk about. It's not that long ago, historically speaking. But the monsters went into the corners. They got scared away around the late 1920s. That's when they all had to go. Krampus had to go, and all the monsters had to go because of the Great Depression. And the Great Depression was brutal. And the only way out of a depression, economic depression or recession for that matter, is to spend money, which is weird. I know, because if you don't have money, how do you spend it? And if you do have a little bit of money, your every instinct is, I should save this because times are really bad out there. But once you spend, things get better. And it was in that era that the Coca-Cola company came up with this ad campaign with Santa Claus and said Santa Claus could help us sell Coke. And they came up with this jolly figure, this big red suit and the white trimmed hat and the fur and all that other stuff. And it worked. And people bought more Coca-Cola that year. And the following year, anybody who sells anything was thinking, wait a minute, Coca-Cola doesn't own Santa Claus. Santa Claus could help sell my donuts, pizza, cars, whatever it is you sell. You could have the world's biggest celebrity as your spokesperson, and suddenly Christmas became about consumerism, and there was no room for anything scary. We need to spend, buy, be happy, be jolly, get the latest, greatest toys, keep spending, spending, spending. It was around that time that Thanksgiving was moved to the fourth Thursday of November, because it was always the last Thursday of November, which it still is sometimes mathematically, but it was moved to the fourth Thursday because retailers needed more time for holiday shopping for Christmas. And what's good for the economy is good for America. So it was moved. Friday became Black Friday, and the Christmas holiday became squarely about consumerism and buying, buying, buying. And we don't need Krampus in there scaring anybody off. We don't need Belschnickel or all these other monsters. Let's focus on the spending. And that's where it sat for a long, long time. And I feel like some of us are getting a little tired of that. And that's part of the reason that, these things are coming back, because we're just like, wait a minute, they were always here. They were here long ago.
Yeah.
And there's nothing stopping us from bringing these stories back again. And here we are, when the Krampus movie came out in 2015, he exploded, and he's just been getting bigger since. Like, I mean, there's Krampus candles and stuff in the, in like gift shops. And there's this new book, Fright Before Christmas. I've heard it's fantastic. I'm not sure, but you know what I mean? Like, he's getting bigger. He's coming around again. And on the back of that, people see what else is out there.
Tracy, you wouldn't know anything about cold, darkness, living in Nova Scotia. This is very foreign to you.
Oh, yes, I know, Bruce. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And you've got so many great Canadian traditions too, right? That whether it's mummering over in Newfoundland or every culture, every country has put its thumbprint on this holiday. And yeah, I mean, you must know it is still a dangerous season. It's a season you have to survive up there.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's like the darkness of the weather. And it's funny, I was just reading an article that it's actually mummering season right now over in Newfoundland. And they're just gearing up. I think it's December the 9th, I think, is when they have their big parade. And then they start to go visit all dressed up. And it's a fun time from what I hear. I've never participated.
So for those who don't know, mummering is kind of like caroling, except a lot more alcohol.
Yes.
So the whole idea is you put on a mask, but it's an ugly mask. Like, it's just like a sack over your face. You might cross dress. You might dress in women's clothes if you're a man, or man's clothes if you're a woman, whatever. You're supposed to not be recognizable. And then you bring musical instruments. There could be a guitar or like an accordion, but there could also be, someone described to me, an ugly stick, which is just a big stick with a bunch of like bottle caps nailed into it. So you bounce it on the ground and it jingles and makes a sound. And you go door to door and you sing songs and you try to get inside, and people try to guess who you are, and you'll disguise your voice or whatever. And they'll say, "Oh, are you Tracy?" "No, I'm not Tracy." And then they give you alcohol and treats. And anything that leads to free alcohol and treats, in my experience, is, tends to catch on. So you spend a few minutes in that house, then you go down the street to the next house, and on and on and on. And by the end of the night, you're loaded, and it's just this raucous good time. It's very much an adult thing. You don't bring the kids to this.
Exactly.
And that's where it was. And so mummering is just a derivative of wassailing, which wassailing was not. I mean, people think of wassailing and caroling as interchangeable. They're not. Caroling is sort of our modern washed down version of it. Caroling is you stand outside someone's house and sing and go to the next house. Maybe you get some figgy pudding, whatever that is. But the wassailers, it was literally a spiritual thing. If you're a farmer, you would hire wassailers to come and sing to your fruit trees and sing to your animals that they would be blessed for the winter, and that there would be a good harvest next year. And you would give them like a boozy punch, not too much alcohol. You just want to warm them. You don't want them drunk. And so you'd give them this kind of like boozy punch, and they would drink it out of their wassailing bowl. And you'd pay them either in money or maybe like food or treats or whatever, or alcohol. And they would sing to your trees, and then they would move on to the next farm. And so that it's all very pagan, and then later on we turned it into caroling. But it also part of a tradition of like a beggar's night. You have to realize in the Industrial Revolution, late 1700s or so many factories were water powered. And when the water freezes, everybody, and there's no daylight anyway to work, everybody's furloughed. So it's Christmas and everybody's out of work. And so they go to the boss's house, wassailing, caroling, mummering, and looking for handouts. And the boss, if they're smart at all, gives you good stuff, not just scraps, but like gives you good stuff. And you literally forgive him for the layoff and you come back in the spring and you work again. It becomes a steam valve for the entire year, which is what it was born. I mean, Saturnalia, centuries BC was all about a social steam valve where we're going to party, we're going to flip society on its ears and sort of, party down before we hunker down for this long winter that we all have to get through.
It's almost as if you have my outline in front of you, because I was going to ask you about Saturnalia next. This is a custom that I had never heard of until we had David Scull, great historian, horror expert. He was on just before Halloween, and he talked about Saturnalia. And this was something that was a real big thing in ancient Rome, right?
Yeah. So ancient Rome, it started out in the farming villages. Saturn is the god of the, Satis means to sow. So Saturn's the god of the harvest and time and so on. And so this festival, December 17th to the 23rd, was a 6-day party. Your harvest is taken in, the wine has been made, the ale has been made, animals have been slaughtered. They'll keep in the colder weather so you can have fresh meat. You feast, you give each other gifts, you dress in fine clothes. There's each house might have a lord of misrule where they get to almost be like the court jester. And then the masters serve the servants get to be the masters, and you get away with saying and doing stuff that you would never get away with the rest of the year. There's big festivals and parties and gifts and orgies and all kinds of things that Rome does. And that party just raged because, it sounds like a good time. And it caught on, and then it moved into the city, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger over time. So that's really the base root of all of this. And Rome also gave us December 25th as Christmas. That's where it all started. It was the Roman Emperor Constantine, who was the first Christian emperor, the one who was trying to unify Rome under one God, who said, look, Jesus was born a commoner. If it was important that we knew Jesus's birthday, it would have been written out for us in the Bible, but it's not. You only get one clue in the Bible as to when Jesus was born, and it's in Luke chapter 2. It says, shepherds were laying out in the field, watching over their flock by night when the angel of the Lord appeared. That's our only clue. And in Bethlehem, shepherds stay out with their flock all night long in spring, summer, and fall, which means the only season we can rule out is winter. Doesn't matter. I don't always celebrate my birthday on the day either, but December 25th in the Julian calendar was the winter solstice. That was the day, that was Sol Invictus. It's the shortest day, but it's also the day that the sun returns. And if Jesus is going to be royalty, only royalty keeps track of their birthdays back then. Jesus needed a birthday. He's a king. He's a king of kings. The winter solstice seemed the perfect fit. So now you've got 6 days of partying, December 17th to the 23rd. He knew he couldn't mess with that. It's too big. And now he can add on another day of partying on the 25th. And that's something people can get behind. And so that was the first one. And Christianity was at war with that date, December 25th, at war with it from about 336 AD until, roughly the 1970s or so, when they gave up and just took it over. The priest, my Father Lawler, I was raised Catholic, right? Father Lawler, we were in the church hall and 5-year-old kids, right? And Santa Claus walked into the church hall. Santa Claus, do you hear me? Santa Claus walked into the church hall. He had a bag of gifts. He had candy canes for every kid and a little wrapped present, which turned out to be a little plastic rosary for each kid. And we're freaking out because, like, Elvis, the Beatles, Santa Claus just walked in, and there's Father Lawler in the corner, arms folded, looking so mad, furious. He was trying to shoot laser beams out of his eyes to make Santa's head explode if he could. I was like, he's going to throw hands any minute. And I'm like, Father Lawler, what's up? This is the greatest guy on earth. That is Santa Claus. He's bigger than Jesus. Oh, right. And so there it was. And, he knew this is all pagan. This is all pagan. And I hate this. Christianity isn't defined by Christmas or the birth of Jesus. That is not what defines a Christian. The holiday that defines Christianity is Easter, right? Everybody's born, but nobody dies and is resurrected. That's the big one. in Christianity. That's what makes you a Christian. You believe in the Easter story. The Christmas story is not nearly as important theologically speaking. So they were at war with it forever because it was literally banned by the puritanical parliament in England for decades back in the 1600s because you'd be fined for dressing fancy, giving gifts, drinking libations. They said, we do more to dishonor Christianity in the 12 days of Christmas than in all 12 months combined. And so they were at war with all these practices that had been in place for millennia as a steam valve, as a way for people to come together of all faiths, all cultures. And what I love about it is no matter what conflict, what war, what you believe, what you don't believe, so many of those traditions survived. And they made it all the way through. And you can look in your own house and you can see the lights and the tree and maybe the star, and you can see garland around the tree and the wreath on your door and go, none of this is in the Bible, right? All of it has roots. And I'm not saying do away with it. You can put all the faith you want in anything you want. However, all of it has a backstory. And when you learn it and when you understand it, it's sort of beautiful that we've brought those things all the way through because they resonate on this very primal level that go back to ancestors we've all had from long, long ago and, very difficult climates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the things you really clarify in the book is that Santa Claus and Saint Nicholas, not the same person.
Two people. So, which I know is very confusing to us Americans because we grew up using the names interchangeably. Old Saint Nick, Santa Claus. I get it. It's very confusing. In Europe, Saint Nicholas shows up on December 6th. That's Saint Nicholas Day. That's the day that Nicholas of Myra, which is modern day Turkey, Bishop of Myra, he passed away. And that became his veneration day. He was the people's saint, patron saint of pawnbrokers, sailors, children, and a host of other things. So many miracles attributed to him. More churches were named after him than all of the apostles for the longest time. So even the church had to relent and make him Saint Nicholas. So he arrives on December 6th. Santa Claus really starts to come into his own in more like the second half of the 1800s, and he's really coming into his own in America. The Dutch brought him over to New Amsterdam, which of course became New York, and then Sinterklaas became Santa Claus, and he got huge in the later parts of the 1800s, and then 1900s. He just really came into his own. And in America, we never really celebrated St. Nicholas Day. So we just kept Santa Claus on December 25th. In Europe, Santa Claus has gotten so big, he's gotten so global that those who are really traditional will still celebrate St. Nicholas Day on December 6th, where St. Nicholas comes and brings presents or treats to the kids. And then on December 25th, Santa Claus comes and brings the new iPad and the new iPhone and the Xbox games that we've been waiting for so patiently.
You've made a couple references to it already, but certainly one of the major themes of the book is the monster known as Krampus, or as some have said, maybe not accurately, the anti-Saint Nicholas. Prior to the release of the 2015 film Krampus, I have to be honest with you, I'd never heard of this Christmas time monster. Why was it at this point that you think Hollywood decided, let's venture into the story of Krampus? How'd they even find out about it?
So Krampus is from Austria and Germany, and he never went away there. I mean, he's a monster, by the way. He's covered in fur. He's got horns, a long red forked tongue. He's wrapped in chains so you can hear him coming. He carries a scratchy sack, and he shows up on December 5th, Krampusnacht, and he goes all around the world, and he looks for all the naughty boys and girls, snatches them up, stuffs them in his sack, brings them back to his mountain lair, and kills them. So St. Nicholas is free to bring presents to all the good girls and boys. That's the story. That's the folkloric Krampus. There were other movies made before 2015, but they were really small time B movies that people don't really quite remember. And I think, so Krampus runs were starting to catch on. There were Krampus groups forming, not now outside of Germany. So he was just, and really this is on the back of the internet, right? So the internet starts spreading these ideas. And it looks like fun. Cosplayers are like, wait a minute, I do, Star Trek cosplay in the summer. I could do Krampus in December, and so people start to join these Krampus groups. They start to learn more about him. And, you have to remember, Hollywood is a reflection of society. I think society sort of takes the lead, and I think they just caught the front wave of at the right time. And then that movie gets played again every year now. And I think he's sort of turning into like a cult classic, as Christmas movies sometimes do. Christmas stories of all kinds. Sometimes they become part of tradition. And once they're a tradition, boy, that's that. They're going to stick around a while. So Krampus got huge off that movie. And he's sexy. He's a monster. He's got everything that you would want if you're making a Hollywood movie. But then, of course, it begs the question, like, well, who else is out there? And then you learn there's a bunch. And right, he is not the anti-Santa Claus. He's not at all. He's a cohort. They're partners. They work together. This is good cop, bad cop. In fact, if you look at some of the great old postcards, you see that St. Nicholas and Krampus will arrive at the house at the same time. And the little kids are so happy to see St. Nicholas, and the naughty kids are hiding under the table, petrified, because they know Krampus is there for them. And that when I was a kid, I was told, hey, you're going to get less presents, or you'll get coal and sticks in your stocking, right? Imagine if it was, okay, two guys are walking in right now. One of them is obviously a good guy. The other one is obviously a monster. And which one do you think's here for you? And your brain starts running through all I stole the cookies from the cookie jar. I hit my sister. I did this thing. Like, oh no. Right. It's time. It's time to face the music. That was a real consequence. We got rid of all the consequences that these monsters represented. And that was a real true blue consequence when you were a kid, especially if you grew up in that part of the world.
Yeah. Jeff, what did you think of the movie? Did you like it?
I loved it. I totally loved it. And I know I'm not and by the way, don't take this as a movie review. I'm not a good person to ask. I was so happy to see Krampus in a movie that they could almost do no wrong. Like if it was a polka musical, I would have been like, yay, I think they hit the spirit of what Krampus is. And I don't want to spoil it. Command in 2015. You really should have seen it by now. But
I haven't seen it yet.
You should. You should. It's funny. It's campy. It's horror. And it made a lot of money. It did well. But I think they hit the spirit. He's not there to just maim and destroy and kill you. He's here to help us. Does the person who punishes the wicked, is that person evil? We need that person. Right, in our society, we need, and I mean, if you're the wicked, you might look at them, a little differently. But we need the executioner. We need the guy in the black cloak holding the axe, ready to take off the head of the wicked. Someone has to do that job, and so that's Krampus. And so I think the spirit of the movie, it shone through that. Oh, he's here to help. And ultimately, you'll warm your heart if you find it just the right way. So
yeah,
I loved it. But I understand anyone who says, like, as a piece of theater, it might have been crap. But whatever, I loved it.
No, I think it's a pretty good movie. It held my attention without question. I didn't know it was a comedy / horror going in, and it does start out with a lot of humorous overtones. But then by the second and third acts, it's pretty dark. It's pretty frightening in some ways.
Because here's the thing, and by the way, that sums up this whole holiday. How in the world can you see the light unless you go to a dark place? It's impossible. Scrooge knew it. Scrooge had to go down to the deepest, darkest depths of his psyche and his soul and his bleak, bleak existence in order to finally get redeemed and see the light. We all have to get down into that dark place. These monsters will help us. When it's July and you're at the beach sipping a Mai Tai as the surf tickles your toes, you don't see the light. It's all light. Everything's easy, right? I mean, what's easier than that? No, when you're cold, when it's dark, when you're scared, when monsters are lurking, ready to kill you, and you take stock of your life, only then can you say, man, oh man, time to drop these chains, these shackles, time to look out for each other and get right doing right, or else that I don't know another way. And so that movie, I think they hit it right. We're going to get into a really dark, scary place now. It's going to get bad. before it gets better, because that's how conflict and resolution work. You've got to get to a bad place. And one of the cool things too, is I was thinking about the Christmas holiday, is think about how frustrating the shopping is. And people used to literally die at like sales on some of these stores. I don't mean to laugh, but it's ridiculous that you would die to like get a doorbuster sale at a big old shopping mall or whatever. So we're literally getting out there and being the worst versions of ourselves, trying to get the latest toy or whatever, and forgetting what this has always been about, which is like, we kind of look out for each other. All of us. Like, of course, your kids, and you want to give gifts, you love them and you love your loved ones, of course. But how do we show that affection outside of just spending and going in the hawk, and sharing stories and cooking for them, and, quality time, peaceful time, coming together, saying we have to stay inside because it's dangerous and dark out there. The storms are coming. It's winter. Like, these are ways that sort of conspire to bring us together where it's safe. And so I love that we have to get to a dark place. We have to. And then only then can we come out on the other side better for it.
A fascinating point that you make in the book is that Krampus actually influenced Dr. Seuss to write The Grinch. Tell us how you came up with that. There you go.
So I was thinking about how I felt a little, ripped off that my parents didn't raise me with Krampus. And I was like, man, I didn't have anything cool. I had Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, like, boring, and I had those old, animated shows, which were fun in their own right or whatever. But then I was like, wait a minute. Krampus was in my childhood. He was in yours too. He just went by the name The Grinch. He's covered in fur. He lives in a mountain lair over Whoville. He's, angry. I know he doesn't have horns, but sometimes the fur would curl into what looked like horns. And come on, if you don't think Dr. Seuss borrowed that from Krampus, where else, and so, no question, that was heavily influenced. And I think that was just a shadow of Krampus in our childhood, animated, singing great songs. And ultimately, he was the one that got redeemed, right? Grinch was the one whose heart grew 3 sizes that day. And because he caught the spirit of what the holiday's supposed to mean. And if his heart could change, then we learned that our heart can change. He basically, combined Krampus with Ebenezer Scrooge and came up with a holiday classic that's still around today. And I still love it, by the way. I tip my hat, but, let's call it what it is.
Oh, it's great with Boris Karloff. It's been done in other forms too, but the original cartoon, the original animated program is probably still the king in a lot of ways. Jeff, I'm curious about Krampus today. Are there cultures today that believe Krampus is real?
Okay, so do we have a discussion about what reality means, which could take a while and involve chemicals, or
we don't have time for that.
Okay. Yeah, I know, right? So how do we sum this up quickly? In Austria, he never went away. He's gotten softer. He's not necessarily running around scooping up kids and killing them anymore. That would make international news. But they do carry switches of sticks. And if you attend some of those Krampus parades, they'll run along and the Krampuses will sort of hit you in the ankles and shins lightly, not too hard. And the idea is to scare the bad spirit and the bad cheer out of you. That's where it's sort of evolved to today.
Right.
Is he real? Yes. Okay, for example, Santa Claus is real, and I'll prove it to you right now. Santa Claus. What do you see in your head? Same thing I see, isn't it? I mean, can we agree? Big red suit, white fluffy hat, the whole thing. Older guy, white beard, drives a sleigh. You know where he lives. He's got his names of his reindeer. So yes, that is real, and our collective psyche makes that real in almost every way that something can be real. An analogy I like to use is the paper money in your wallet, toonies and loonies, if you will, Tracy.
Right.
But the paper or the coin money that we carry, we can trade that for pizza and beer, right? And that's a miracle, because the paper is worthless. It only works because we believe in it. And if we stop believing in it, it stops working. Ask the Confederates how their money's doing after the Civil War. Not so well. Like a loaf of bread on day one could be like $5. And then day 3, it was like, you know what? I need 20 Confederate dollars for a loaf of bread. And then 2 weeks later, they could be like, you can give me 1,000 Confederate dollars. Forget it. It does me no good because it doesn't work anymore. We stopped believing in it. So that belief makes it real. Pizza and beer is real. If I can trade you a $20 bill for pizza and you give me pizza and beer, that's very real. So yes, Krampus is real. All these monsters are real. Santa is real. No question. And that's my debate about like, how do we define reality? I can tell you the Christmas spirit, the spirit of Santa Claus, the spirit of Saint Nicholas possesses me freely. I welcome it every year. I become that in a way, and I further this thing that's been going on for many, many centuries. I give the gift of that magic to my child and the family around me freely, and I welcome it. And it's a real thing that you can actually feel sometimes if you're doing it right, and that is kind of amazing. And what's realer than that? And then December 26th comes and there's an exorcism, and and it's actually not the 26th. The exorcism actually occurs when the visa bill arrives. And you're like, oh, the spirit's out. It's gone. It's all gone. And then we spend all year waiting for it to come around again. It's very real to me. I spend a lot of money and time and energy on that. And I love it. And I don't want to live in a world without it.
I think you make a great point. I believed in Santa Claus till I was 12, which is somewhat embarrassing in retrospect. But even though I finally learned from, I think my mother finally gave up the ghost and said, well, there's really not someone climbing down the chimney. But I believe Santa Claus still exists in everyday people, parents who provide for their children. There are people who are charitable, especially at Christmas time, and have a Santa Claus type nature to them. So I think, in that sense, Santa Claus is many different people, many different good people. So I think what you say is very accurate. Let's talk about some of these other characters and creatures that we should know about that I did not know about until reading your book. And I want to have you explain each one. I know I'm going to butcher some of these pronunciations, so I apologize ahead of time. The first one, I believe it's Caraconcolus, something like that.
The Caraconcolus, yeah.
Caraconcolus.
So Caraconcolus hails from Bulgaria and the Baltic region and that whole part of Europe. He's a shape-shifting, subterranean, glowing red eyes Bigfoot. And he comes out during the unbaptized days, which are the 12 days of Christmas, the most deadly, darkest days. He comes out at night. He's going to try to jump on your back, claw at you, and ride you till dawn when he has to go back underground. Sometimes he hides over doorsteps, looking for people who are sneaking out at night, up to no good. But he's also a shapeshifter, which means he can look like anyone or anything, and he could try to get into your house. So, for example, if you think Aunt Ethel is out there on Christmas Eve with her horrible casserole knocking at your door trying to get in, it could be Aunt Ethel, but it could also be the Caraconcolus. Don't risk it, right? Just be like, Ethel, girl, that's probably you, but, because the whole idea is that these monsters, and this is what's true really all over Europe, the monsters are trying to get in, and our sole job is to keep them out, right? To stay safe inside and to keep them outside. So they can shapeshift. They can look like anything. And that is as real can get, because we know, we have access to the news. There are monsters out there. And sadly, they don't look like glowing red eye, hairy beasts that come from underground. That's too easy. A lot of these monsters look just like us. They look just like people, and they do horrible things. So the Caraconcolus, I think, is sort of spot on as far as something we need to be afraid of.
And a lot of film and TV today uses shape-shifting characters, so maybe there's an influence there.
Of course, and aren't we all? I mean, our personalities shape-shift depending on the company we're with. Code switching is a popular term, but I get it. We all code switch. When you're around your people at the bar, you might swear a lot and whatever, let your hair down. When you're at work, you might have a very, formal veneer where you, oh yes, welcome and good day, and I am never like this any other time, and so we all sort of have different, we all shapeshift to get through our lives, and finding our real authentic selves is a rare treat for some of us, but a worthy pursuit.
Another popular creature is the Belschnickel.
The Belschnickel, he's coming back too. So, okay, Krampus, number one fame, if we're talking about like Twitter followers, right? So sure, he's the most famous, but Belschnickel, I'm telling you, is on his heels because he's showing up in pop culture references too. So if bringing Krampus into your family tradition seems a little harsh with the whole killing children thing, Belschnickel is like Krampus light. It means Nicholas in furs, and each community would have one. He'd be covered in a patchwork of furs. He'd have soot on his face, carries a switch of sticks. He comes alone. He doesn't come with St. Nicholas. And he could show up weeks before Christmas. In the community, it could be my turn to be Belschnickel this year. And I would knock on your door, Bruce, and I would say, are there any naughty children here? And you might say like, well, this one over here has been great all year, but little Johnny there, not so much. And Bruce, I would take your child, little Johnny, out back, and I would tie him to a tree, and I would just beat his ass with sticks over and over again. He would cry and scream. And the whole idea is that he can sort of get right, correct his behavior, and get some gifts in time for Christmas. And next year could be your turn to be Belschnickel and come to my house and beat my children. And it's kind of beautiful, right? The circle goes round.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, interesting. I never heard of that one.
But he's coming back. So if you've ever seen NBC's The Office, there was a Christmas episode, Dwight Christmas, where Dwight Schrute played Belschnickel. He was covered in fur. He had the sticks, the whole thing. And then last year, 2 years ago, Netflix put out Christmas Chronicles 2 with Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, real life husband and wife playing Santa and Mrs. Claus. The antagonist, the bad guy in the movie, was this young person with a black leather jacket, long black hair, and the character's name was Belschnickel. Which the movie deviates in that he was the enemy, because in real life they're not enemies at all, but in the movie he was the enemy. So anyway, he's been on The Office. He's been in a Netflix blockbuster movie. Watch out behind you. He could be at your house next.
Really? You might have said this, but I didn't pick it up. What culture did that come from?
Also Germany and Austria.
Germany.
Yeah. The Germans again knew a thing or two about monsters. Yeah.
All right. The next one is a female character, either Gryla or Grilla.
Grilla. Yeah. Grilla from Iceland.
Oh,
Grilla may be the worst of all of them because she is a mountain ogress. She lives up in the mountains. She's got 13 tails. She runs a whole dysfunctional family of monsters. And unlike Krampus and Belschnickel, who seek out naughty kids, Grilla does not discriminate. Naughty, good, makes no difference, right? Grilla comes down around the winter solstice and collects her rent. And any kid out there that's lost in the woods or whatever is going to get snatched up, brought back to her lair, cut up into a stew, and eaten. And this is stuff that parents warn their kids about. Iceland is such an interesting country because when the Europeans first settled there were no people. It was literally covered by an ice sheet, centuries before the ice receded. And then all that was left on the island were trolls and imps and fairies and magical monsters. And as Europeans settled there, things started to change. The towns and villages grew and all the monsters had to go back up into the mountains. But at the solstice, they'd come down. They'd come down and kind of collect their due. And so you keep in mind, so in Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland, at the winter solstice, there's about 4 hours of sunlight. The sun, rises and sets. If you go further north, it's less. If you go to the very northern tip of Iceland, they're just about at the Arctic Circle. There's no sunrise at all. So that's the time where you keep your children and your family safe inside because Grilla is coming. And she's such a pop culture figure in Iceland now that when you land at the airport, you know how we have mall Santas where you can take pictures? Right. There'll be this giant cauldron with this like big hag of a woman behind with like stirring it, and you can get in the pot and take pictures with the Grilla, which is amazing. I love that. And there's other places around the country you can do that too. So Grilla comes down to collect, and you just got to keep your kids safe. And think about it, go back again 100 years or so. And if your kids are lost in the woods in the dark and the cold, and they die from exposure, or the Grilla gets them and eats them, is there a difference, right? The end result is the same. So if this monster keeps your children scared and safe inside, this monster helps, and it's a story worth telling and retelling.
Right. Oh, that is a very cool story.
She's I love that she's like, yeah, because with Krampus you're like, oh, you've been naughty, you could be in trouble, like you could use the threat, but with Grilla you're like, hey, good luck.
I'm going over and over in my head, what stories can I tell my children?
Yeah, all of them. Let them worry.
Exactly.
Grilla seems like a perfect subject for Hollywood. I'm thinking a few years ago, that movie, I can't remember the exact title. It was a Hansel and Gretel horror movie with Jeremy Renner. And I would think a movie in that kind of style would be perfect for a character like Grilla.
And where did Hansel and Gretel come from? Where were the Brothers Grimm from? Germany.
Yeah.
Gosh. And if you read those old original Grimm fairy tales, which you can get any of the bookstore, like the old ones, the originals, they were brutal, before Disney got their hands on them. Yeah. Cinderella, like in the original story, the stepsisters were trying to get their feet into the glass slipper. Their feet were so big. So one stepsister cut her toes off, filled it with blood, trying to wedge her foot into that glass slipper. The other one cut the heel off of her own foot. Same thing. Like Disney seemed to miss that part, right? When you watch the movie, they just didn't quite happen. So there's a book I read years ago by Dr. Bruno Bettelheim. It was called The Power of Enchantment. And his whole point was, he's a child psychologist, about how children's stories and fairy tales used to be pretty rough, and that kids could handle it. That the obvious line between good and evil in those old stories was sort of helpful, and how we've really overplayed the good and really toned down the evil in more modern children's stories, probably to the detriment of our kids. So, for example, Jack and the Beanstalk is such an important story, because the story is about, it's so obvious, right? Who's the giant? We are. The parents. The parents are the giants. And the kid is not stronger. No kid is going to be as strong as an adult ever. You will never beat an adult in a fist fight, but you can be smarter. And we want our kids to outsmart us. We want to know that if you're out there among monsters and giants, that you're not going to beat them with strength, but maybe you can outsmart them and survive, because that's what it's all about. And so anyway, I think that there used to be more of an understanding of just how dangerous the world can be. And in the interest of protecting our kids, we sort of washed down all these stories, but I think they're coming back.
Yeah.
And Krampus is one example, and Grilla and different cultures, we're bringing them back.
Yeah. Do you think the younger generation that's coming up is helping to bring that stuff back? Like, is it the young kid? Well, not kids, but the younger generation, younger than me, trying to bring these stories.
This will sound a little woo-woo. I really believe in the collective consciousness. I believe that we ebb and flow through different moods and feelings and so on, and that it takes all of us, right? No one person could bring this stuff back. I think of my own daughter. She loves horror movies, but look where she grew up. So I can't. She's not a really good guide for that. But I think they have more of an understanding of just how scary and dangerous the world can be. Right. Think about it. Like, they do active school shooting drills in my daughter's school, because school shootings are a thing. They weren't a thing when we were kids. No school got shot up, but now they're a thing that you actually have to practice for. Yeah. So they are growing up in a world that is more obviously scary than I think when we grew up. We just had to worry about white vans to kids.
Yes.
And now they're like, white vans. Oh, that would be easy, right? That's the least of my concerns. So yeah, we live in a different time when people are getting, famous for acts of monstrosity.
Jeff, one other creature to talk about, the Yule cat.
Yeah, the Yule cat's great. Another from Iceland. The Yule cat comes down on Christmas Day, and you need to lay out your brand new clothes that you got for working hard all year, and lay them out on Christmas Day. Show that you have new clothes. Otherwise, the Yule cat is going to kill you and eat you. It's that important. I sort of think there's the capitalist in me thinks maybe there's a economic reason for this. Hey, you got to buy new clothes. You got to, pump up the economy here a little bit. If we're all buying new clothes, that helps everybody. There's money for Christmas. But part of it too is that you're showing you're not lazy. You're showing you're productive and you're working hard, and that you can afford these new clothes. And it's a sign. Like everybody wears the new clothes on Christmas, and you walk around and everybody sees it. And if you're not in your new clothes, you're going to stick out. And nobody, ironically, wants to stick out, right? You want to blend. And that story gets sort of told and retold as a way to remind us that, you make sure that you've got enough left over to spend when it's Christmas time.
Oh, very cool. I was fascinated about the Yule Cat. I'm a cat person, so that one really stuck out.
One more comment on the Yule Cat. That same movie, Christmas Chronicles 2, with Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, the Belschnickel was the antagonist, and with him was a giant cat called the Yule Cat. Just saying, this stuff is creeping into popular culture again. So not just in Iceland, now also on Netflix.
Yeah. You made a brief mention of this earlier, but I want to explore this. This really will be one of our final topics. One of the interesting customs of Christmas in the not so distant past was the sending of greetings cards, but they were nothing like the cards of today. They had images of Santa Claus type figures wielding large knives or axes. They had creepy clowns, devilish characters. Where did all of that come from?
So greeting cards, they got, as printing presses and so on got bigger and bigger. Krampus cards, and there's so many out there, by the way. You just do a Google image search, Krampus postcard. And in the latter half of the 1800s, the early 1900s, there are just dozens and dozens of designs that survive of this wonderful thing. So you would send these as greeting cards instead of like Happy, Merry, Lovey Christmas, right? It was reflecting the times. Like, this is the time to be scared. So let me send you a time, something reflecting that. Our Christmas cards got soft the same time we pushed the monsters away. Then it went from like sending Krampus cards to Happy, Merry, Lovey, Spendy Money Christmas cards. And now I have bought Krampus greeting cards in previous years off of, websites. Although now I think you can even get them on Amazon. But I send them to friends and they were like, I love this. I couldn't love this anymore. I get all these like sappy, sweet, Christmas tree cards. And then there's yours. And this is where I truly believe in like supply, demand, and the basics of economics. If people want those cards, someone out there will print them. And if people keep buying them, they'll say, wow, we printed this many of these cards and we ran out. Next year, let's print more, right? It's just how it works. We vote with our wallets. And so that was what the Times called for, was these, like, how crazy can we make these cards? And then the taste changed. And now God knows where we're at. but I do suspect, because I bought those cards and I know they're still out there, that I think they might be coming back.
Tracy, will you send me one of those, please?
That's a cool idea. I was just going to say, I need to have one of those.
You can make your own.
That's great. That's great.
I will get creative.
Jeff, before we let you go, what is the best place for people to buy the book? Do you prefer Amazon or your website? Tell us about that. So
remember when I said how like things are coming back and people vote with their wallet and demand and all that other stuff? So my book is selling out. Amazon, the publisher's warehouse is gone. It's empty. Amazon has sold out as of the other day.
Wow.
Bookshop.org has sold out. Barnes & Noble still has a few left online, and Books A Million still has a few left online. Of course, the audiobook won't run out. That's out there, and I narrated that. If you can get that wherever you get audiobooks. The Kindle version won't run out. But the print hardcover is just about out of stock everywhere, which is, as problems go, is good if you're the author.
Sure.
But yeah, the first edition, first printing has been received well better than any of us have anticipated. And so, so which is great, but it also means that it's sort of rare. So if you see one and it's something you want, this isn't like a hard sell. Go check Amazon if you don't believe me. It's gone. So wherever you see it, or independent booksellers too, can get it.
Okay.
So that's,
and your
that's
website?
where we're at. Ordinarily, I'd say anywhere, but not anymore. Yeah, my website's my name, jeffbelanger.com. And that's where I've got links to everything. I'm on a story tour right now. So many nights this month, I'm telling these live Christmas stories in front of audiences. It's like a one-man show. It's been super great. I've been doing that for years. And doing other media appearances and things like that. All my other books, there's links there to places where you can buy them. Those are in stock on Amazon, but not this one. This one's gone. But yeah, so yeah, no, I love what I do. I'm very blessed that I get to do this as a full-time job between, working on the show Ghost Adventures for the last 15 years and writing books and podcasting and everything else. Like, I'm just so lucky that this is my full-time job. And so I deeply appreciate being part of the paranormal community, which is, all my weird friends are there. And, also it's been a great community to be part of, for so long, just because I love the camaraderie and that we're all into weird stuff and we're all searching for answers.
Again, Jeff Belanger, author of 16 books, his latest, The Fright Before Christmas, Surviving Krampus and Other Yuletide Monsters. I'm enjoying it immensely. I'm probably about halfway, two-thirds of the way through it. It's a lot of fun and certainly perfect for this time of year. Jeff, this has been great, very entertaining, very enlightening. Thank you for joining us on the Ghostly Gallery.
Thanks so much. Good talking with you both.
Our guest, Jeff Belanger, we thank him. We thank Tracy also for her contributions as well. Tracy, appreciate it. We want to thank all of the listeners joining us here on the program, joining us in this Museum of the Macabre. And we hope you'll join us next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.